Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another Lost in the Pond reaction, and this one is 7 US place names I've been saying all wrong. Part 3. I don't know about part 1 and part 2. I feel like I've seen both of them, but I can't remember. But I haven't seen this one, so yeah, we're going to check this out. Hopefully you're going to enjoy, and let's just jump into this, man.
And from what I can see, this seems to cause a bit of uproar among Texans who think, ooh, look at you, New York, naming one of your streets after our famous city and then changing the way you say it.
I feel that, man. To be fair, God damn, that was loud. To be fair, in the UK, like we'll say, I'm trying to think of a city. Peterborough. In the US, it's like Peterborough, isn't it? Like you say borough as if as it sort of shows, but for some reason here we don't say Peterborough. We're like Peterborough.
Hello,
stuff
I'm
like
Lawrence
that.
and
Or Derbyshire. We say Derbyshire. We're like Derbyshire. I don't know, just stuff like that.
I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to place names. Specifically, place names that I've been saying wrong this whole time. Being from Britain, of course, I'm no stranger to place names whose spelling and pronunciation wildly differ. Just look at Leicester, Gloucester, and the Isle of Dogs.
Oh yeah, there we go. Leicester's the good one.
It's just funny and doesn't fit into this video. But what if I told you there are actually hundreds of place names in the United States that follow suit? Well, in fact, I have told you that before because there were 2 previous videos in this series. But since part 2, I've had more than a year to think about it, and so more places have come to my attention. Whether I discovered these wild pronunciations in the news or in the comments section or after butchering them in previous videos, here are 7 US places I've been saying all wrong, part 3.
Valdez.
I don't know what it is about this Alaskan city, but it seems to crop up in a number of my videos. Firstly, I name-checked it in one video because it's dubbed the snowiest city in the United States.
What?
Secondly, you may have heard me reference it in the...
God damn, Valdez does not sound like an Alaskan city. I thought it'd be in like New Mexico or something. Look at that, flipping. That's kind of sick though. But scary at the same time because that snow falls and you're done for.
City in the United States.
What the
Secondly, you may have heard me reference it in the video British earthquakes ain't got nothing on America. I'm speaking, of course, of Valdez, Alaska. At least that's how I used to pronounce it before I heard it.
So
that's the problem with a lot of these. I spend my time reading about them instead of hearing them, and I end up looking like a prat. Because even though Valdez, Alaska was named after a Spanish naval officer, locals in fact pronounce it as Valdez, as in Valdez nuts. Is that reference still relevant? It's not, no. And you might say that was a pronunciation shift of seismic proportions. And that brings us on very neatly to this. In that very same video on earthquakes, I talked extensively about the New Madrid seismic zone. For more information on that and the related 1812 earthquake, I will link to that very video at the end. But one thing I discovered while researching that video is that I've been saying New Madrid wrong my entire life. That's an exaggeration.
How can you say that
since I was 3. In other words, like many people, I've been pronouncing it just like the Spanish capital, Madrid. Yeah. But for the locals, it's not just a pronunciation shift, but one of emphasis. They emphasize the first syllable as in New Madrid, and this is an example of a shibboleth. And what's a shibboleth, Lawrence? Well, it's a custom or a tradition, or in this case, a shared spelling that distinguishes one group from another. In other words, it's to let you know that this place in Missouri is not the same as that place in Spain, although you'd think the word new would take care of that. Anyway, yeah. While we're on the subject of places that were named after European cities but pronounced differently, that brings us on to this.
Milan.
Ah yes, Milan, Italy,
Tennessee.
where everybody is fashionable except during those 2 months when Uncle Toby lived there. And the funny thing is about this entry, Brits and Americans can't even agree on how to pronounce the Italian version of the city, with Brits like me saying Milan and Americans usually opting for Milan. So when it transpired that there was a Milan in Tennessee, I panicked. I assumed it was just pronounced Milan, but nothing is that easy, hence why there are 3 videos in this series already. In fact, locals, which is a term I've just realised I've been overusing and overgeneralising, but what the heck, call their city Milan, which does sound like an American boy's name. Funnily enough though, some people believe without strong evidence that the city in Tennessee was not named after the Italian city at all, but came about in the 1850s when a railroad surveyor asked the owner of the land, "What's this place called?" To which she replied, "It's my land." And then they wrote it down. This sounds made up. I can't trust it. Clearly this kind of thing is common in the area of Missouri and Tennessee, but you wouldn't find it in my current state of Illinois. Really? I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Cairo.
As you may or may not know, there is a city in northeast Africa called Cairo. It is the capital of
Probably
Egypt.
do know.
Egypt, of course, is famous for the pyramids and for pharaohs and cat worship. Don't tell mine. Little Egypt in Illinois is famous for not much, but we are about to put it on the map. And that's because it too boasts a city called Cairo. I say
What?
Cairo, that's not how it's pronounced.
How do you say
I
it?
say boasts. Charles Dickens visited there once. He hated it. In fact, and this is true, he used it as inspiration for his nightmare City of Eden in the novel Martin Chuzzlewit. You know, but that was nearly 200 years ago. That's not a reflection of the city today, nor is it a reflection of how other British bearded writers think about your city, although I've never been. What I do know is that I spotted this place name on a map while searching for Grimsby, Illinois, which was named after my hometown in England.
That's so funny how there's so many different names of like cities that are around the world. Like, you'd go to the US, but like, say, I don't know what example I could give, but say like you go, this is going to be such a bad analogy. Say you're blindfolded, yeah, and you're flown to somewhere and you have no idea where you are, and you're hearing all these names. The last place that you would think, other than obviously probably looking at the land and seeing the people, is that you're in America. Actually, there's a better analogy. Just say you're given a list of cities, and you're like sort of trying to guess where this country is. I think the last place you'd think, other than if you know about these name places and you know about America, the last place you'd guess is America. Like, and maybe actually no, but England you'd guess because you got like Grimsby, you got like Norwich, you got Ipswich, you got all the names, you got Birmingham, all these names. God, it's crazy, bro. I swear you could each have a name for every town or city in the UK, and it's probably in the US somewhere. Whether it's a small village, it's a town, it's a city. It's mental, man.
As I've just discovered, Cairo, Illinois is pronounced
cool,
Cairo. Clearly the locals have
Cairo.
a humorous relationship with vowels, which is more than could be said for our next entry.
What?
Say hello to a place name that I'm
Xyzax.
pretty certain, I can't even pronounce, was brought to my attention in the comments section right here on YouTube. Not sure if they were joking
What
or
am I
not.
looking
I
at?
went straight to Google Maps and typed it in. And sure enough, in the state of California, there is an unincorporated community called xyzax. Or at least that's what I've been saying in my sleep for the past 4 years. And the grand history of xyzax is a hilarious but mildly stupid one. You see, it was named this in 1944 by a radio evangelist called Curtis Howe Springer. And his reason for choosing the name is that alphabetically it would be the last word in the English language. But here's the thing, this guy who was a self-proclaimed medical doctor and minister actually
kinda
had
smart,
no
to be
legal
fair.
rights to the land and was evicted and imprisoned by the federal government. And as it
Damn.
happens, he was neither a medical doctor nor a minister. And when it comes to claiming the last word in the English language, clearly the guy had never been introduced to the cartoon concept of sleeping. But despite all of that, xyzax is still around to this day, except locals pronounce it xyzax. Well, that's sure shown me, which in a
Xyzax.
weird way brings us on to this. Okay, I know what the near 1,500 people who live in this city are thinking. Come on, Lawrence, there's no way you've heard of our city, much less mispronounced it. But here's the slightly bizarre truth. Before going full-time on YouTube, I used to work for a company in which I provide consulting for healthcare professionals in the state of Idaho, and some of those professionals were based in Shoshone. Let me clarify, that's how I learned to pronounce it. Before talking to these health professionals, I wanted to make sure that I sounded like I knew what I was talking about, which, as everybody knows when it comes to the US healthcare system, is completely straightforward. But one thing I really didn't want to get wrong was the pronunciation of their city. So I looked it up and was told in no uncertain terms by a YouTube video that it was pronounced Shoshone. Well, it turns out that the terms were uncertain, and I was notified that that is in fact how you pronounce the name of the Native American tribe after which the city is named. But the city is pronounced Shoshone, and to this day, Idaho, how I got that wrong. I should have said that in the call, it would have lightened the mood. Recently, amid
Houston.
the rare snowstorm in Texas, I started doing some reading into the city
How
of
are you gonna say
Houston, a
this?
city that I've always pronounced Houston and continue to pronounce as Houston to this day. And anybody who's watching from that very city might be thinking, Good on you, Lawrence. That is in fact how we say it down here. To which I respond, Houston, we have a problem because A, I've always wanted to say that, and B, the Houston on this list doesn't refer to the city in Texas with whom I've been advised not to mess. I'm referring to Houston Street in Lower Manhattan, and that's because it was recently brought to my attention on Twitter that this is pronounced not Houston Street, but Houston Street. And from what I can see, this seems to cause a bit of uproar among Texans who think, ooh, look at you, New York, naming one of your streets after our famous city and then changing the way you say it. And even I was kind of on their side until I found out there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. The two places were named after a person from American history, but not the same person. Famously, Houston, Texas was named after the soldier and former governor Sam Houston. But it turns out that New York's Houston Street was named after the American lawyer and statesman William Houston. And since William Houston was initially a citizen of the Kingdom of Great Britain, you can blame this whole debacle on my people.
Oh,
That's it for this episode.
It always comes back to us, for God's sake. But yeah, interesting. I'm from Wisconsin. All of our place names are easy to pronounce except for the people not accustomed to place names in Wisconsin. So everyone else, for the record, these nuts is timeless and will always stay relevant. Locals is the correct term, as this is not a US versus UK issue. Most US would pronounce these just as you have been. What's funny here is that New Madrid, Cairo and Milan are really close together. You have to drive through Kentucky to drive from one to the other three. God damn. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. These videos are always quite fun to do, and if there's any other ones like this you want me to see, if I haven't seen the part 2 or part 1, I'm sure I've seen some of them, but maybe I haven't. If I haven't, let me know in the comments and I'll give them a watch. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe.